Tracy, you can go ahead and call the meeting to order.
Okay, this is Tracy Mitchell. I am the school board president. It's May 22nd, whatever the date is. Sorry, I'm driving right now. So yes, I do call this special board meeting to order.
Thank you.
Perfect. I'd like to just make some brief introductions on the audit side. Tonight we have Courtney Amneson. She is our audit manager, and then Christina Baylor is the, I don't know the official title.
Assistant audit manager and then
program manager, and then Wendy Cho, I want to pronounce your last name.
Choi.
Choi.
Mhm.
She is the local audit director, if I recall correctly. Who's here on the audit team overall, and they've worked with Becky Thomas, our accounting director, with us to go through our audit for the fiscal year of the 22-23 fiscal year.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. It's a rainy day, so, you know, it's welcomed, I think, but had to break out the umbrella today. So we are very excited to be here today to share the results, the preliminary results of Everett School District's 22-23 school district audit. This is a little bit of a hybrid setting. So we have our audit lead, Maggie Wallace, is joining us on Zoom. She's going to be presenting a PowerPoint or virtual presentation to assist us with today's meeting. But for those of us joining us in person, we do have a packet of information that's available to you. And we also provided a combined packet that I think was sent out as well. So we will make sure to mention both the page number on the combined packet as well as what you have in front of you. But no, all of these results are summarized on the virtual presentation that we'll be walking through today. So to get started, I'm just going to take a moment to say, I think everyone here has been through the audit process a little bit. Do we have anybody that's new to an SAO audit?
Director Atkins and Director Owolinsky are new to school audits.
Okay, well, welcome. Thank you both for joining us today. Well, just to give you a quick overview of the state auditor's office, and Maggie, you can advance to slide 2 if you'd like. The state auditor's office takes our role to be the auditor of all public funds very seriously. We're actually written in the state law and in the state constitution to be the auditor of all public funds, which means that we have the unique responsibility to visit all school districts within Washington state on a very regular cycle. Typically, it's done annually because schools receive a significant portion of federal funding, which has a requirement of an annual audit. And we do a couple other types of audits as well in conjunction, such as a financial statement audit and an accountability audit. But most importantly, our office has 3 main goals that we hope are shared goals that we like to share with you today. The first and foremost is just increasing trust in government operations. The audit process for us is a tool, and we hope you view it as a tool as well, just to know how things are going, get some insight from an individual or separate party on how kind of what we see from an audit standpoint, and bring that to your attention so you can decide if there's any corrective action that needs to be taken, or just assurance that things are going as you anticipated. But we also perform our audits independently. All of our results are published to our website. So that means any member of your public can visit our website, take a look at the district's audit reports, and get a sense on how district operations are going. And then lastly, we know that the audit process might result in audit recommendations. That's kind of the nature of, doing reviews. But whether it does result in recommendations or doesn't, please know that our main goal is to make sure that those recommendations are easily understood, but also that they help improve your processes. So if something is, not quite clear, if you'd like us to spend some time, today's meeting is a really good chance to kind of talk about those items and make sure there's no questions before our results become public. So with that, we have 3 separate audit results to walk through. So we did 3 separate audits. The first audit we're going to be talking about is what is called a federal grant compliance audit. So the district does receive a substantial amount of federal funds. When you receive and expend over $750,000 in federal grant funds in 1 year, it does trigger an annual audit to meet federal requirements. And I'm going to turn it over to Courtney, and she's going to walk you through the results of conducting the federal grant compliance audit.
All right. So as Christina mentioned, we conducted a federal compliance audit for the period of September 1st, 2022 through August 31st, 2023. The goal of our federal compliance audit is to review and determine whether or not the district complied with the compliance audit requirements that are in place for the grants that we selected for testing. And then from that, we will issue an opinion on each of the federal programs that we tested. So you'll see right there on the screen at the top, we're issuing an unmodified or clean opinion on all of your federal programs, with the exception of the Emergency Connectivity Fund, which we will be discussing shortly. That one is receiving an adverse opinion, and we'll go over that a little bit more in just a bit. So our audits are also conducted in accordance with government auditing standards and in accordance with uniform guidance. And as such, we're also required to review the internal controls or what process the district has in place to ensure that you are complying with all of the requirements that are laid out with each federal program. So again, you'll see that we did not identify any significant deficiencies. We did identify a material weakness or some material weaknesses and material non-compliance specific again to just the emergency connectivity program. The remaining grants, which I'll talk about in a bit, did not have any major recommendations at all. So just the one program that we'll be talking about further. And just so that you are keeping track of where things are in the packet, if you were in person, pages 4 and 15 includes the opinions for the grants we talked about. And in the electronic document, it's on pages 4 and 25, just so you're familiar with that.
And just for everybody's reference, if you're opening up the packet that's in front of you, on the left-hand side, we have what's called our exit conference agenda. This is a summary of everything that we're going to be talking about up here. So there's no need to have this up in front of you right now. On the right-hand side, we have draft copies of our audit reports. And so Courtney is currently working through the very first report, which is our financial and federal report.
All right, so the programs that we reviewed this year, we looked at your coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds, the emergency connectivity fund program, as I mentioned, the special education cluster, as well as the education stabilization fund. And I just realized the special education, I don't believe had COVID.
It did.
Did it?
Yep, it had a small.
Oh,
Yeah,
COVID.
they had
I
ARPA
apologize for that.
Yeah.
So perfect. Which that in total made up 59% of your total federal expenditures for 2023. So the program that we're gonna spend a little bit more time discussing is emergency connectivity. So Maggie, if you wanna move to the next slide. So the goal and the purpose, I guess, of the emergency connectivity fund, that program, is to provide equipment and services to students and staff that had an unmet need, that did not have access to complete their schoolwork in a remote setting. And so as you can see on the screen, there's 5 requirements. That last element for restricted purpose actually has two requirements under that header, so it's 6 in total. And as you can see, we had recommendations that we'll be discussing on the next slide related to activities allowed, allowable cost, and restricted purpose only specific to unmet need. We didn't have any major recommendations specific to period of performance, how your equipment was tracked, as well as making sure that each student received only one device per person per location. And so the finding itself, which is included in your packet, it's included on pages 6 through 10 of the paper packet and 16 through 20 of the electronic packet. Basically, we identified that the district didn't have adequate internal controls in place to ensure compliance with activities allowed, allowable costs, and again, as I mentioned, the restricted purpose specific to unmet needs. And this resulted in question costs of approximately 3.5 million. And our recommendation really found that the district needs to have adequate internal controls in place to show how the district made the determination and had supporting documentation to show that each student that received equipment at the time of reimbursement had an unmet need, how that was performed. And so our recommendation is also that the district work with their granting agency, with the FCC, to resolve this recommendation. This also goes along with the prior year recommendation. I know you're already in the process of working with the FCC to get resolution on that as well. It's not uncommon if you receive one finding to typically receive it the second year as well, just to the timing of when everything happens to be able to complete and take the correct action. So as you can see on That slide is included in your packet on pages 21 and 22 electronically, as well as 11 and 12 of the paper packet. That we do have in your report, the summary of the prior audit finding. We are in agreement with the district's determination that it's uncorrected at this time because you are working through that process with the FCC to resolve. And until that it has been resolved, that's really where it's going to stay until there is resolution there.
And just an FYI for the room and for the board as well in regards to where that stands. Ultimately, the FCC provided communication in March that they would get back to us in 6 months after the finding, which was 3 months after the 6 months. The other piece to this is a statewide issue. There was a disproportionate amount of findings nationally related to this program specifically in Washington state overall. And so we still don't concur with the auditor's conclusions overall. And that's what's reflected in the finding as response as well, specifically with the fact that the program itself didn't have program requirements in regards to how you define the unmet need, which we communicated to our auditors that it was related to our RAM speed, which we have documentation around why we provided that, and that was a district-wide process overall. And for last year, the contention was specifically, should we have provided it to every student? And we believe, yes, we should provide it to every student because each of those students that had those devices didn't have the RAM to support online learning. If we had to go back into that remote learning environment, it was an unprecedented time overall. And there was so much uncertainty around what we were doing that we believed this was the appropriate use. And we believe from a statewide perspective, most likely will maintain the funds, but we can't confirm that until they provide any response. So we're over almost a year out and have no response from the FCC.
So for the new director, this is a repeat from last year.
Correct.
And I'm happy to hear that this is really not a surprise. This is a process of working through. And I just want to clarify then, so you did hear in March an expectation
That they would get back to us in 6 months.
6 months, so that puts it in September.
6 months from the audit date, and so we received that notice 3 months after their 6 months timeline.
Yeah,
So most districts received that notice in October timeframe, and theirs was delayed for us, and I don't know why. Maybe they had a lot of them, so maybe we got missed in that regard. But speaking with other districts, there have been no response, nor any request for documentation outside of that.
Have we discussed with Larson's office about the FCC?
Yes. We've reached out.
I've also spoken to the Center of Education in March. And I appreciate you, doing what you gotta do, but there's one statement in here, when they talk about, the findings on. The learning did not stop during that time, right? So we're in COVID, then post-COVID, the kids got their laptop. And I know I'm talking to the choir here, but I do wanna share with you that it doesn't sit well with any superintendent in the state of Washington. And then nationally, we haven't gotten responses. But when I talked to the Secretary of Education in March, did learning stop? It did not. So we're talking about what's measured and what's, during the pandemic, we gave out laptops, public education. So we go to homes and get that, but public education provided learning during the pandemic. And I just have to say that to you. I said to the Secretary of Education, because you have two choices. Close down the doors and go home, or educate the youngsters from home. The only device or teaching that can take place from home is the computers. And I understand your role, and I have to say that to you as, like, and then, I spoke to Rick Lawson's office with everybody, but you understand where it sits, okay? So I don't know what we can do.
could I follow up on
Please,
that though,
please.
that, so if my understanding is correct, because you're doing your job, what you need to do as far as reporting it. But here we are a year later, and so right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is really FCC and all of the districts in Washington that have been affected. So those are the conversations we need to be pushing. And then, okay,
Yeah.
okay, appreciate that clarity.
And I believe there's been outside organizations to help support the districts in having those
Agreed.
conversation, and it
It has yet to yield results. Okay.
that's a fair statement. Yeah.
I think to go off in that statement too, as with your child, and I have 3 boys that we lived through that pandemic. It's the difficult piece of kind of what we talked about last year at the exit too. It's the nature of this grant that we have to audit to, but when you look at big picture wise, if it wasn't for our school districts and our education support system during that pandemic, you're right, education did not stop. So it's just us needing to do our responsibility to review the program. But yes, that communication now is with FCC.
Is now the time to ask questions about this? How did you arrive at material weakness? Material weakness is like pervasive issues, whereas a significant deficiency or control deficiency, and even the dollar amount feels small, so I really feel like, the material weakness is a black eye. More so than a control deficiency or a significant.
Yeah, so we took a look at the equipment. There were 8,000 computers that made up 99% of this federal program, and that's where the question costs, because of the significance of the amount that made up, because it was 99% of the total federal expenditures for this program. That's where we came to that material non-compliance.
When we look at materiality, in this case, it's not materiality for the financial statements for the district as a whole.
Right.
It's specific to the federal program that we're auditing to.
Got it.
And then the other piece of that material.
Can you have, I guess I wonder, can you have a material weakness in what is essentially like an attributes or a control test? Sure, 99%, but when taken in totality, I don't like saying that my district has a material weakness. I don't like that,
I mean, that, not, don't like having to give it, but it's one of those that, we have to include qualitative and quantitative factors together when we make that determination of whether or not we're gonna report it as significant material or material. And in this case, based on all of the attributes combined, that's where it became.
Is every other district getting a material weakness in the city?
They
That has
did,
a finding?
they did last
Okay,
year.
all right, say no more.
Yeah, and Roman, this is just the Washington State Auditor, and I really appreciate Andy and Ian advocating for us.
I'm advocating for us too.
I think she just.
Okay.
Are there any other questions before we move on to the next portion? Oh, all right. So the other portion of this particular report is your federal compliance. So again, Maggie, if you want to move to the next slide. Until she gets there. Oh, there we go. So again, we performed a federal compliance audit.
Financial audit.
Or excuse me, financial audit, stuck in the brain. For the same period, September 1st, 2022 through August 31st, 2023. And our goal of our financial audit is to take a look at the financial statements and make sure and gain assurance or determination of whether or not the district reported their financial statements accurately and correctly, and then issue an opinion so that you and anybody utilizing your report can rely on the opinion. So you'll see that the district completes their financial statements in accordance with US GAAP. And as such, we are issuing an unmodified or clean opinion on your financial statements. Again, to ensure that we are complying with government auditing standards and all the requirements that go along with that. We again looked at the process the district has in place to prepare the financial statements. And if there were any weaknesses in that process that could lead to significant errors, we would be required to report on those. And again, you'll see that we had no significant deficiencies and no material weaknesses. We really had no recommendations at all for your financial statements. overall. So very clean financial statements. Great job to the district, making sure that everything was reported correctly. We also have to take a look at compliance with any laws, regulations, contracts, anything that could have a significant impact on your financial statements. Were you not to be in compliance with those? And again, you'll see that we did not identify any instances of non-compliance related to those items as well. And just for your reference, the opinions and the information really related to your financial statements on the paper packet, it's included on pages 13 through 22, and pages 24 and 29 is where, excuse me, well, the whole thing is pages 13 through 24. It's just all in there, but.
And there's also a nice quick summary if you're looking on page 4 and 5, so you don't have to go into the details.
Yeah. So on the next slide, we are required to let you know if we identified any material misstatements, any really large errors that the district had to correct. We did not identify any of those items at all. We also have no uncorrected misstatements to share with you. So again, great job to the district, very clean financial statements.
Next question about that.
Mhm.
Can you give me a feel for how you calculate materiality?
How
And I have my own materiality when I go through reports and stuff, and I would just love us to be at least in the same ballpark.
Yeah, for the financial statements for Everett School District, since they prepare their statements using GAAP or full accrual accounting, we look at each individual fund, and our office uses a consistent 10% materiality typically of expenditures or
Got
assets when we're assessing material.
One or the other.
It depends on what statement we're looking at, and we'll adjust it depending on the activity within the fund.
So are you saying you generally take the larger of the two? Or the
We
smaller
have to
of the
look at
two?
each fund, and we'll use, if the activity is more balance sheet driven, we'll usually go with the balance sheet. If it's more income state driven, we'll usually go with the income statement.
Got it. Thank you.
So it just depends.
All right, so we are also required to take a look at any areas that could pose potential risks to the district and report on that. So we focused on potential management override of controls. We took a look at the process you have and performed some testing and did not identify any instances of management override of controls or any concerns that there could, your controls would potentially allow for that. So again, exactly what you want to see. And then finally, related to the financial statement audit, the district goes for the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting Award. We've been going for this award for many years now. And so that is an optional award it's put in place by the Government Finance Officers Association. To apply for this particular award, there are some additional schedules and an audit review that is required in order for us to then provide you the annual comprehensive financial report, the ACFR letter, which we did provide to the district on February 29th of this year in order to be able to submit for that award. So again, great job to the district.
And on that note, you'll see all of the individual statements that we audited, shown on page 23 of your report in front of you. I know we say this almost every year, but the district is one of, I think it's 4 or 5 now. Is it 4 now? 3 now? Well, okay.
I believe
It's-
one went away and I don't remember if it was in the.
It keeps getting smaller each year.
Mhm.
So, out of the 260 some, school districts in the state of Washington, only less than 4, 3, whatever the current number is, report using the full accrual method of accounting. So that takes your staff's time, a lot more time and effort to not only prepare these statements, but to stay up to date on all the new accounting pronouncements. And so we've never want to under highlight this effort. And so it was a really great audit as well, and allows the district to apply and receive this award of excellence.
A couple other notes to consider and why we do this. Part of that, we do get a better bond rating because we do provide the additional liabilities and assets related to our other post-employment benefit plans on those statements. And so it gives us the ability to have a higher bond rating overall. So that is one benefit, as well as the public perception in regards to getting that additional support, providing that additional clarity in regards to the information we're putting out as well. So.
Can I ask
Well,
that?
and Andy, can I actually congratulate you and the full accounting department
for this award and all of your oversight.
The team effort. I think Director Revelinsky as well.
I would only add that it adds to our culture of excellence. Thank you for being excellent.
All right, well, with that, we're gonna move past the financial and federal compliance report, and I'm gonna turn it over to Maggie to talk about the accountability report.
And if you're following along in front of you, we will be now moving to the third document on your right-hand side, which is the accountability.
Okay, thank you. So we also conducted an accountability audit for the 22-23 school year. The purpose of the accountability audit is to determine whether the district complied with state laws, regulations, contracts, grant agreements, as well as your own policies and procedures. In addition, they also look at whether in general, the district has adequate controls to safeguard public funds. Under the results in brief, you'll see that our audit found that the district's operations complied in all material respects. And then in selecting the specific areas for further review, we do use a number of planning procedures that incorporate reviewing the meeting minutes, analyzing trends in financial data, conducting risk assessments, as well as other procedures. We utilize a risk-based approach to select areas for further review. On the slide here, you see the areas we selected for this year. The first one, the use of restricted funds. This area is actually mandated for audit by state law and has been reviewed for the past few years since it's been established. For professional learning, we confirmed the district expended its professional learning allocation in accordance with state requirements. And then we also confirmed there were no changes to the district's written plan and methodology for distinguishing expenditures of state and local revenues, and also verified that the district allocated those expenditures as described in its plan. Supplemental contracts is also another area that's mandated for review by state law. For this area, we selected a few contracts and ensured that they included the elements that state law requires. And then we also gained an understanding of the district's accounts payable process. We looked at what the internal controls were, and then we selected specific items for testing, making sure that they were in compliance with the district's policies and procedures. And then electronic funds transfer, this one's a statewide theme that we continue to see increase in, with requests for change in payment information for employee direct deposit. So for this one, we just followed up on a few recommendations we had in the prior audits and just made sure that they were adopted. And the last two areas are just areas that are included in all of our audits. So they're considered baseline review. For the Open Public Meetings Act, we just review the meeting minutes and make sure they are in compliance with OPMA requirements. And for financial condition, we're just making sure that the district is meeting certain financial ratios and that there's not any need for us to warn the public of any financial distress or bring anything to anybody's attention. And I do want to highlight that in all of these areas, we only had one item, it's just considered a housekeeping item. So again, it was a very, very clean review for the accountability audit. And then we do have a few closing remarks to bring to your attention to conclude our presentation. So the cost of our engagement is expected to come in under budget. In addition, we've included information on the district's next audit. You can see that we're going to be doing the same 4 audits. And then we also have included a cost estimate for your budgetary needs for the next audit in the exit packet. We do expect to issue the district's reports. They'll be published in this coming week on our website. If you have not already, you can sign up to receive an email on when those are released. In addition, we'll be sending a customer service survey. We do encourage you, as well as anyone else that participated in the audit, to complete the survey because all feedback is great and helps us to better serve your needs. And please feel free to forward that on to anybody else that you may think would benefit from it. And then before we conclude, I do want to give a thank you to Becky. She was our audit liaison this year, and I think this was your first year pretty much doing it by yourself. And I just want to say you just did an amazing job. We have many, many requests, and I was just constantly amazed with how Becky just balanced it all and kept everything moving forward. So thank you so much. So that concludes our presentation for today. We do thank you for your time, and at this time, we'll open it up for any last-minute questions.
Madam Chair, do you have any questions to start?
Yeah. No, I just want to say, thank you so much to Andy and her team. I know it is a team effort. And thank you for the positive comments about what we did well and right. So are there any other questions or comments?
I just want to say thank you to you all for your support this year. It's always a partnership. Even though we may disagree.
I think, so I have a couple more like really basic questions. The first is, and I tried to go through Gaga's to find required communications, and it just kind of says all over the place that it is auditor judgment. And so you just tell me a couple sentences about how you exercise your judgment and what should be communicated versus not.
do you have questions specific to the
How do you
financials?
how do you decide what needs to be communicated?
Just throughout the audit process in
Yeah,
general.
yeah.
I think on a high level, we have standard practices to make sure that we are communicating very set points throughout every audit engagement we do. So we hold an entrance conference on every audit where we invite all the members of the board and the superintendent to participate at the beginning of the audit to let you know we're conducting an audit and if you have any areas that you'd like us to consider.
Right.
As an office policy, we also request all of our staff to do risk assessments, which occurs with at least one board member, the superintendent, and members of the finance committee to understand any risks that the board might want to share. And then, throughout the audit, we have an assigned audit liaison, so we will keep them up to date throughout the audit. But at the conclusion, our office policy is to hold an exit conference as we
Yeah,
are
right. I'm
today.
talking about like required communications to those charged with governance. That's what I'm talking about.
We do have the ones that right off that comes to my mind, the required communication for governance is extending that invitation for the entrance and exit
Okay,
conference
yeah.
so that we can
Bookends.
share the,
Yep.
bookends,
Got
and
it.
then the risk assessment
Risk
inquiry,
assessment.
that's also part of for our office policy and standards.
Mhm.
And then in the event that there is maybe a disagreement with our liaison or there's a scope
Right.
limitation, which
Yeah.
clearly is not here for
Yeah.
Everett Public Schools, but in that event, we do have that other avenue of, okay, we need to let the superintendent, somebody in executive or the governing body know. So those right off the top of my head are kind of the real required set standards.
Okay.
Are there
Got
specific
it.
ones that you kind of?
Typically too is management, anything that rises to the level of management letter or finding that will
Mhm.
always be
Yeah.
communicated to the governing body. And I think we provided the exit items, but we also have exit items that come through that are not necessarily required from my understanding, but we often provide that information for the housekeeping items overall.
Got it.
And that's a
Okay.
great, one. Andy mentioned the management letter, so that's a formal letter
Yep.
to the governing body versus, not elevated in description in the report that's issued on our. Yeah, okay.
Thank you. I would add just one comment to what Tracy was saying. I know that an audit extends throughout the organization and it's not just finance. I read the finding on the lunch situation
Exit item.
and I could not believe how amazing we are. I mean, I think we give kids like over 4 million meals a year.
Yeah.
And there were, that is like 99.98 accuracy.
Very.
Impeccable. It's virtually perfect.
We
So-
appreciate that.
I extend the congratulations to everyone that has a role in financial reporting and stuff, so.
Shannon, Charles?
No additional, much appreciation for all of this. I think it helps our system and I think it highlights a lot of the good work as well. So thank you.
I want to thank you all. It's been 5 years we've been sitting together. It's been going really well. I appreciate your support and hard work and working with my team. That's been exceptional through this process and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, if there are, can I call this meeting adjourned?
Yes, you may.
Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone, for this, and the meeting is hereby adjourned.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you.